Well, welcome everyone. My name's Kate Craig. I'm a state Senate candidate here in Northeast Tennessee running in District 3. So that's Washington, Carter, and Johnson counties. And I appreciate you all joining in here on giving up some time on your Sunday evening. Maybe you're joining us as you're eating dinner. So if you'll take a moment and share this on your social media platform, I greatly appreciate it to help us get the word out because, what we're talking about here tonight is incredibly important, especially talking about workers' rights and what the Republican Party is looking to do to enshrine right to work in our state constitution. And we'll get into exactly how misleading that language is. But I'll just go ahead and preface it in saying this is an incredibly bad bill or bad measure, the bad amendment that they're looking to pass. So I can't emphasize enough we're going to encourage everybody to vote no on one. But like I said, my name's Kate Craig. So please add into the comment section where you're joining us from. Maybe you're joining us from Johnson City. Maybe you're joining us from Carter County. Maybe you're joining us from Hamilton County or Knox County. And we've had lots of people tuning in across Northeast Tennessee and East Tennessee. But I appreciate everybody being here. And if you're just now coming in, my name's Kate Craig, and I'm state Senate candidate here in Northeast Tennessee, running in District 3. So that's Washington, Carter, and Johnson County. And I'm looking to flip a seat that's been held by a 32-year incumbent, Rusty Crowe. And basically the thing that Rusty has done a lot of things to hurt our district up here and hurt Northeast Tennessee. And one of the biggest is that he created the largest medical monopoly in the nation. And so he changed the state law to create it. And it's time to have some common sense in Nashville. So like I said, thank you for being here. We'll pay attention to comments that drop in the comments section. If you have any questions or anything as we go through this broadcast, and if it's live, we'll try and answer them as it goes. If it's not live, we'll try and come in as you comment, and we'll comment back with answers. So please don't hesitate to drop a comment or a question in the comment section because we want to make sure that all of your questions get answered. I like to start these off with a story from the campaign trail. And, this week we had something incredibly important happen. And there's been a lot of bullying that's happened out of Nashville. And what we've seen is that Representative John Reagan out of Oak Ridge sent all the public universities across the state a letter telling them that they need to remove LGBTQ plus protections under the Title IX language. And up here, that letter went to Brian Nolan at ETSU. And I'm a proud ETSU graduate. And this was incredibly disheartening to see. Yes, as a graduate, but also as a member of the LGBTQ plus community. And it's straight up bullying because he threatened funding for higher education institutions if they did not immediately pull the language. And I don't think that this is what people send their elected officials to Nashville to do. We don't send them there to bully people. In the same way that Rusty Crowe threatened funding for public institutions if students kneeled, if students exercised their First Amendment rights. So we don't need any bullies in Nashville. And please, please, please get out and vote. And let's get more people that believe in common sense, that believe in decency, and quite frankly, believe in freedom. Because you can't be limiting freedom and say you believe in freedom. Those two things do not go together. But seeing that pass and seeing ETSU get bullied into having to remove that language was heartbreaking. So we're just seeing the escalation of the slate of hate coming out. And it's one of many reasons why I'm running. And we've got so many people that are representing our community that are allies of, are part of the LGBTQ community, have family members in it, whose children, whose parents are part of the LGBTQ plus community, or students just trying to get a degree and trying to get a job and just make their way in this world. And I'll say, I've said this before, that we want no more, no less than anybody else. So that's just basic decency, and that's what this is about. And when you've got a representative looking to, and quite frankly, a legislature looking to come in and bully people and take those rights away, treat people as less than, that's not the Tennessee way. That's not who we are. So let's make it a point with our votes this November to change that. I'm really excited about the conversation that we're having today because if you don't know, and I hope you do, but if you don't know, we have some ballot initiatives coming up on our November ballot, and one is where the state legislature wants to enshrine right to work in our state constitution. And we are a right to work state, don't get me wrong, but if they put it in the constitution, it's going to make it that much harder to overturn that language. And so I want to open up with a story about Elizabethton, Tennessee in 1929. And I'm going to share a picture here. Some of these are from the Johnson City Press and from 1929 of the rayons, some rayon workers that went out on strike. And it was led by women. And so this started over pay inequity in raises, getting bullied to live in company housing. And so they went on strike. And this lasted for, just short of a week. And then some mediations happened between those on the picket line and the company. And but then the company, after a deal was reached, that they refused to hire back those who were on the picket line who fought for everything that was mediated. So then on top of that, 2 union leaders were kidnapped and dropped off outside of the state, outside the area, and told never to come back. They were bullied into they're trying to silence workers' rights, trying to silence what's going on. But those 2 union leaders did come back and they told their story of what happened. And this was about a month after the deal was reached. And as soon as their story got out, the workers again went out on strike. And this is the Bimberg workers out in Elizabethton. And so now you got 4,000 workers that are out on strike. And so the plant owner reached out to Tennessee Governor Horton, who sent in the National Guard to intimidate the workers that were out on strike. They set up machine guns up on the rooftop, used tear gas, and it was, just straight up to try and intimidate the workers. 300 people were arrested during that time. 2 houses were dynamited. 2 barns, one containing plant machinery, were burned. The main water leading into Elizabethton was dynamited during that time. And despite demands from the labor movement to remove the National Guard, Governor Horton refused. They also had rulings from the court, the Carter County Court, restricting them from exercising their First Amendment rights in front of or on company property, or even to march in the street to gain visibility for this movement. And so so this happened, and there's this obviously this huge intimidation of what's going on. And so 2 months later, the deal was reached, and there were still 300 workers that were blacklisted from the picket line. And the union itself was never recognized by the company. But Bimberg continued to have issues with pay inequity and workers' rights all the way through the 90s. And I remember when I was around 10 years old in Elizabethton that Bimberg workers were out on strike out there trying to protest for their rights. And everybody was driving by supporting those workers because they knew that this was the right thing to do. So we here in Northeast Tennessee have a rich history of fighting for our rights. And so I want to emphasize that. And I've specifically chose a local issue or a local example because this isn't something that happens out, somewhere else, although it's equally important when it happens somewhere else. We're hearing a lot of the stories about Starbucks workers in Knoxville, in those areas. And I, hope that they all get unionized. But here is a local example of something that has happened. And unions are a way to level the playing field, give workers a voice. So when you have a voice at the table, you get 40-hour work weeks, you get safer work environments, you get child labor laws. And quite frankly, you get what we have, this weekend with Labor Day, you get benefits and holidays. So so I want to go ahead and bring on our guest, who I'm so excited is with us tonight. And so Vonda McDaniel is the president of the Central Labor Council of the Middle Tennessee. And I'm going to let her introduce herself too. But thank you so much for being with us this evening.
So thank you, Kate, for having me. It's an exciting weekend, and I appreciate the opportunity to share with you a little bit about No on One and the labor movement and what we're doing. So yeah.
I was going to say, tell me a little bit how you got involved in the movement.
So I went to work for Bridgestone Firestone in Laverne in 1992. I immediately joined the union. I didn't get immediately active, but within the first 3 years, I did. We were rubber workers at the time, United Rubber Workers. And when we merged with the steel workers in 94, I became active first with the Women of Steel program, then doing training, then doing benefits for the union. And then after 10 years of working with the local union, became active with the Central Labor Council, which represents 20,000 working families in the Middle Tennessee area. We're one of 5 labor councils in the state.
That's great. Thank you for all your work to help protect workers and give workers a voice. And I don't mean to say that from the outside, because I've never been in a job that was unionized, though I wish I did. But I do appreciate you doing that, because I know that as a byproduct, we all benefit from the work of unions. So whether your workplace has been unionized or not, we all benefit from it. So thank you.
Absolutely. And can I say that one of the things about, we often, especially in the South in a right to work state, we have many people that have your experience that have never directly worked in a union workplace. But in states like ours, where the density of unions is low, the earning capacity for all workers is lower. And in fact, in most right to work states, the average earning capacity is about $11,000 less in terms of a bottom line for families.
And that's a big deal when we're talking about affordability, and we're trying, with grocery prices and everything just going through the housing, everything like that. $11,000 could make or break a family.
It is. It's a big deal. It's a big deal.
So, yeah.
But it's not just that, it's access to health care.
Mm-hmm.
It's the ability to work in a safe work space, to have the most highly trained workers. And so not having or having lower density really impacts everyone, whether you're union or not.
Absolutely. So let's talk about the exact language of just the labeling of the bill of right to work, because I've had a lot of people talk about, and so I just want to have us take a minute to say right to work, because a lot of people think that, oh, like that's a good thing, that I deserve the right to work, and Republicans intentionally chose confusing language. And so can we talk a little bit about why this is bad, and what right to work fully means when it's enshrined the way it is?
Sure. And so, right to work, as you put in quotation marks, we all have the right to work, but right to work in practical terms means the right to work for less.
Yeah.
What right to work is designed to do. Often you hear conversations about employment and will. And employment and will is a part of like the state work laws, but really is not what right to work is meant to do. Right to work is meant to allow people to work in workplaces that are unionized and benefit from the everything that the union negotiates, and not have to pay for those services or improvements. And so, what other organization could you join and receive the benefits from and not have to pay the dues. And
Right.
so, really, right to work is about a law that was created by the boss to limit the ability of unions to level the scales of power in a workplace, because uh, unions are democratic organizations. The more unions we have, the more democratic our society, really, because people have an opportunity at work, as well as in their communities, which we do a lot of encouragement of community activism, to be involved. So, yeah, right to work is a very misleading term that was come up with in 1947, to be exact. And Tennessee has been a right to work state since 1947.
And I mean, you brought up the point in the sense of going that being able to join something and benefit from something without paying into that, having skin in the game, if you will. And so, in that, well, I'll just use the example of our roads. We all utilize our roads. And so, our tax dollars go to pay for the roads. And maybe I never, ever drive on XYZ road, but something I utilize does. The delivery truck driver or the person who brings the milk to the grocery store or any of these things, that person does. And so, in this network of things that we all are connected, that we pay taxes into the road to make sure that they are all maintained, because whether I personally drive on it, I'm still affected by all of it. And unions are the same way. And so we all should pay into that system, because we all benefit from having unions.
Yeah, so often, we have a lot of corporations that are moving to Tennessee.
Mhm.
And, part of the selling point of Tennessee is the flexibility that employers have because of the low union density, as if that is something to be proud of. We have well trained, highly skilled workers, and they deserve a fair share of whatever the profits are of the company. We definitely always work. Companies thrive because we are there and participate in their bottom line.
Absolutely. I'm going to drop a banner down here just to make sure everybody sees it. And we'll talk more about this, but I want to make sure everybody knows that there's going to be a rally tomorrow morning in support of voting no on Amendment 1 and in support of workers' rights at Carver Park tomorrow at 10 a.m. So we'll talk more about that, but I want to make sure everybody sees that and gets signed up. Very also excited to have 3 local union leaders speaking at this event. So please tell everybody about this. But like I said, I don't want to segue too much because we'll talk more about this. But yeah, just wanted to drop the banner down there. So what do I want to say? I think that there's a lot of misconceptions around unions and like like what we were talking about, and this selling point, like it's not a selling point when you have a workforce that isn't supported. And so we've seen a lot of that coming out of COVID, where a workforce that wasn't supported, a workforce that quite frankly was used and abused. And I don't mean that straight up on the employer specifically, because but there's a system, a greater system at play here. And so the number one type of job in Northeast Tennessee is a part-time minimum wage, no benefits job. And they're in the hospitality industry. That's the umbrella was a type of job up here. So if people were going to work in the restaurants and quite literally putting their lives on the line, people were going to work at the grocery store, putting their lives on the line, and they're doing it for minimum wage with part-time hours, no benefits. So in the middle of a pandemic, they don't have health care. So there's a lot of things that happened. And then on top of that, people, I mean, I waited tables for 2.5 years. I've worked in shoe stores. I've worked in a lot of one of those types of jobs. And there are people that come in and just treat you horribly because they think you are there to serve them in a subservient kind of way. And so in that feeling used and abused by the general public, and just for the pay, for the lack of benefits and all of that, as they're struggling to decide, they just said, I'm out, I'm done. I don't have any way to negotiate a better situation in this type of environment, in this type of system. And so I'm out. And we've seen that happen. So yeah.
So when you talk about like what is a union?
Mm-hmm.
So a union at its very foundation is just the coming together of people in a common workplace around their collective interest, right? Um, Oftentimes what we hear about is these NLRB elections where enough workers have come together in a workplace that it is recognized by the NLRB. But really, unions begin as workers around the break room table discuss things that they are unhappy with or dissatisfied with, or even a better word, just would like to see improvements in,
Yeah.
and have a voice in terms of how their work life is structured. And as once a union has been voted in, unions decide collectively what their priorities are in terms of wages, hours, working conditions. But not only that, you know, unions, and it's really a sisterhood and a brotherhood where we take care of each other. And this pandemic has been a real demonstration of how not only do union members take care of each other, but they take care of the communities that they are a part of.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. When you've got workers that have better wages and all that, the economy does better. And because their spending power of the workers is greater. And so it's not just about survivability, it's about also helping other businesses survive because they're going into those businesses to shop at them and help keep them sustained. So the economy does better.
Oh, absolutely. I think that there has been um, there should be an alignment, particularly with small, locally owned businesses and workers and unions. The people that have a self interest in not having collective power are large, corporately run organizations. What comes to mind is Walmart, which is one of the largest employers or now Amazon, Starbucks, those kinds of national employers that really benefit from a lack of solidarity and collective spirit in the workplace. And so it's always, I don't know, a bit confusing to me as to why locally owned small businesses sometimes align with companies that are really putting them out of business. When you have a Walmart show up in the community, that puts the mom and pop shops out of business. They can't compete. And so really we should all be fighting to make sure that folks are shopping locally and that they are organizing in ways where workplaces are unionized.
I think as a society, we've been given this false narrative that you're either for businesses or you're for workers. And really you need both thriving to be successful. To have a successful business, you need your workers to be supported and to have a voice and to be thriving as well. And if your workers are thriving, all that, you need your business to be thriving. And so like you have to have both. And so I think that there's just this narrative of that workers' rights means business is not going to be invested in. That especially that risk of small businesses are then at risk because a lot of them operate on the margins and they're just trying to survive. And like you said, we're not talking about this mom and pop business owner that's operating on the margins, that's trying to do right by their employees. We're talking about those large corporations where the CEO is raking it in at the expense of their employees.
Yeah, and at the expense of local small businesses.
Yeah.
Because the more that people can just click and have merchandise delivered to their porch, the less likely they are to support the locally owned small businesses that they used to get those same goods and services from. So yeah, I think that you know that we are in a period of realignment in our economy, and that's exciting to me as a person that has been working for 30 years and has watched international trade deals cause the manufacturing base in this country to be stripped. And what we have seen with the pandemic is the supply chain problems and how difficult it is to get the goods and services that we need from other parts of the world.
Hmm.
And so I see, production coming back to local places. And if we can make sure that those jobs are good jobs that pay a living wage, that provide um, health and benefits, that provide for a dignified retirement, I think there's room in this economy for everyone to thrive. And that's what union work is all about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I don't know if you know this or not, but a lot of people, and I don't even know that a lot of people here know this, but about a year or two back, the nurses at Ballad Health tried to unionize, and it immediately got shut down. And nurses had been leaving at Ballad since before the pandemic due to pay issues and work environments, and even stuff that happened in the merger that people didn't like when the medical monopoly was formed. And so this mass exodus happened even before that, even though right now the hospital system claims it started during COVID. And and so I've talked to so many nurses that between, when I say the ratio between nurses and the number of patients they have to care for just continues to increase. Their pay doesn't keep up with it. And so a lot of them even switched to travel nursing, just trying to get better pay. And but when they tried to unionize, that immediately got shut down. For them to I mean, they need a voice in that system to be able to have a more equal playing field. And it was really sad to see that get shot down.
But what we see with hospitals is a consolidation around ownership.
Mm.
And once, even many of the hospitals were established as not for profit hospitals. And so they were able to pay their workers better. But as they come under these umbrellas of corporate run hospitals, what you see is that they are no different from someone in a factory or at Amazon, or that is required to have a production level that is measured. And it gets more burdensome and more burdensome. Um, and they really don't have control over, what their working environment looks like. So,
Absolutely. So Ballot is actually classified as a nonprofit, but run very much like a corporation. And
hmm.
so it's a very interesting dynamic in the way that all that happens, but it is classified as a nonprofit and still has not great working conditions for those. And I mean, as a person who's been through motorcycle accident and all that, I've seen some wonderful providers in this hospital system, and I want to see them get the resources they need. So that's what I'm fighting for when it comes to that. And so we've got to be able to do that. And with a medical monopoly, they don't have any choice of where they work. You come out of the university, the medical school here, or the nursing program here, and you have one choice to go in, really, in terms of that hospital system. And it's really difficult. So people end up leaving the area.
Yeah, I mean, with a lack of opportunity, these occupations are hard work. Nursing is hard work.
Mhm.
And after a while, it just doesn't justify You risking your health, you risking your back, you risking the health of your family to be able to do a job where you're not respected and where you're not paid well.
Absolutely. And just, I'm going to go on record and say every time I've been in the hospital, it's the nurses who've taken I mean, like, no offense to the doctors, but it's the nurses who have taken the best care of me, the nurses who get stuff done. And I always say thank you to everybody who's been at my bedside. So thank you to the nurses now who are watching and supporting the campaign, or not supporting the campaign, because you're still taking care of patients. So thank you.
So can I say before we move on that what you just hit on is a very, women provide a lot of the care economy in the country. They take care of us when we're sick. They take care of our children and child care. Um, they take care of even our in-home when we get elderly. That's who takes care of us. And those are some of the most poorly compensated jobs that there are. Even teaching has become an occupation that's primarily women, that is just not as well compensated as it should be. And so we go back to the story that you started out with. Um, it has always been a fight for women to be able to have the kind of respect in terms of wages and parity in terms of wages and benefits. And so, that's the other really exciting time about what's happening in the labor movement now. You see, we have Elizabeth Schuler now, who's our AFL-CIO president, and she is really articulating in a new way um, the plight of women workers and how we are pushing to make sure that those conditions improve.
That is incredibly exciting, and you're right. And there's been a lot of laws that have come out that make it difficult, or even like it's supposed to be banned for people, or I should say company policy, to people to talk about their salaries, their wages, to figure out like, oh, we're doing the same job, but you make more than I do. And so with the union and being able to have that bargaining power, that collective bargaining power, that unveils what the company has tried to keep secret. And so where they probably are paying, and they are just generally paying women less. And that gets even more, I want to say, broad if you start thinking about in terms of Black women, or Hispanic women, or trans women, and just those layers that go into that, and everybody doing the exact same job but getting paid less. And so this whole notion of freedom and opportunity and all of that, you can't have that if you've got somebody intentionally putting barriers in front of you, and that's what that is.
You're absolutely correct, Kate.
So let's say somebody's watching, is all on board and saying, I'm going to vote no on one. What's the best way that they can help get the word out? How can they get involved in this movement?
So there are there are organizations across the state that in this final push, Labor Day is really the kickoff to fall campaign season. We have 72 days? Is that correct, Kate?
Little less than that.
And so the organization that we work with is what is called Tennessee for All. Tennessee for All is labor councils, rural organizations, faith-based organizations that are working on this effort. You have the Tennessee AFL-CIO that is working on this effort. We have the party that is working on this effort. We have all kinds of places where folks can plug in and engage. But I would put TennesseeForAll.org as one of the places where you can plug into No on One. We're making phone calls, we're making videos, and we're doing all the things that it's important to do. We only have a few weeks left until voter registration ends. And so right now, We're trying to make sure that everybody is registered and ready to go. This is a very important election where all kinds of freedoms are on the line.
Absolutely. And I'm running against Rusty Crowe has come out in favor of amending the Constitution to include, and I keep using air quotes for right to work because I think it's misleading and it's bad. So I will continue to use air quotes around right to work because it's not a right to work. It's, this right to work. But so I dropped the link there, the TN for all, so everybody can see that. The other thing I want to make sure that everybody knows is that you have to vote for a gubernatorial candidate to have your vote on the amendment count. And so I'm going to encourage you to vote for Dr. Jason Martin because our current governor, Bill Lee, would change and amend our Constitution to include right to work in a heartbeat. So let's support a candidate that believes in having a thriving workforce and in that also thriving businesses, but you have to support workers. So let's vote for a candidate that does not want to amend our Constitution with this, and that's Dr. Jason Martin.
Oh, I totally agree with you. There can be a balance. Things have really gotten out of balance in our state, and it's time to return to a time where our discourse is more civil, where our elected officials are working in the interest of the constituents that elected them, and not in the interest or doing bidding for big business. We pay most of the taxes in this state. We just came off of a suspension of taxes on our food, and we were able to save a little bit. Just imagine what it would be if we could take the tax off food permanently.
Right.
If corporations that did business in the state paid their fair share of tax, and by the way, we're not allowed to see exactly how much each of these corporations are paying. All that's shrouded in mystery. We would be able to fund the things that we care about in our community. And so, regrettably, our governor and most of our legislature have fallen victim to very divisive politics and also to the doing the bidding of corporations rather than constituents.
Yeah. So I would encourage anybody who's watching or as you go out in the community and have these conversations that if you've ever felt like you didn't have a voice at your job, if you ever felt like you wish you did, if you ever felt like your boss just, isn't paying you well, if you're not even able to survive and sustain in the community where you're living and would like to have a way to come to the table to negotiate for more. If you've ever been in that position, and I'm willing to wager that most, if not all of us have been in that position at one time or another. So if you would like to have that opportunity, vote no on one this November, because we'll never have the opportunity to have that if we enshrine that in our state constitution. So I'm going to remind drop back into the Labor Day rally. We're going to be out at Carver Park, rain or shine. So I've seen the forecast, but I'll use that and say, it's raining here in Tennessee, and rain or shine, we've still got to get to work. And so, so a little weather is not going to keep us from doing the work that needs to be done. And so we're going to go out to Carver Park and talk about these issues that matter, talk about why investing in workers is important. And quite frankly, I'm also in favor of raising the minimum wage. So while we've got to do that, it hasn't been raised in far too long, and workers are struggling to make ends meet. So why can't we raise the minimum wage to keep up with it? I believe in the fight for 15. And we've got billions of dollars in a rainy day fund. I love our downtown and a lot of the mom and pop businesses that are in that. Why can't we invest with a program for those businesses to help offset that cost and allow them to be able to acclimate to that that new expense. So let's keep our businesses afloat, but let's not do that at the expense of our workers. So there's ways to do that. Like I said, we've been fed this false narrative for far too long that you're either for one or the other. So please come on out 10 a.m. tomorrow. And I'm also excited to share that we've got yard signs in. So we want to get those out. And so if you live in District 3, we're getting those out. We're rolling them out. We will have them at the rally. So come and get them there. And if you're not on our volunteer list, I've just changed the scroll there. So it's sign up to volunteer. We're doing canvassing, phone banking, text banking. At the end of this month, we'll start with peer-to-peer postcards. So we've got lots of ways for you to get involved. And I also want to remind everybody that we've got a fundraiser coming up, and I'm going to write this in the thing, is that we're doing a fundraiser at the Down Home. And there we go. Let's see. There we go. Get your tickets there. And so we're doing a fundraiser at the Down Home where Ed Snodderly Band, along with Brandon Story and John Gardner, are going to be performing. Very excited to have them there that night. It's Friday, September 16th, at 7 o'clock. Doors open at 6. We've got sponsorships levels available in that. Tickets are $25. So they're going to sell out fast. Get your tickets now. And all of this is helping to support the campaign. So everything that's raised, I wish that campaigns weren't as expensive as they are, but unfortunately that's not the world we live in. And I'm running against a guy that is funded by healthcare PACs, trying to keep him in place to protect the medical monopoly that's hurting us. He's funded by charter school PACs, again, trying to siphon money off of our public schools. He's funded by the private prison industry and working to keep people incarcerated. So this is a guy that is dividing our community. And to me, community means unity. It's right there in the word. So we all have to get together and do that. And those funds will go into direct mail pieces and all the ways that we're going to reach out to talk to voters. So everything that we do is one-to-one going right back into the campaign to reach out and turn out the vote. And so get your tickets. And but Vonda, I want to thank you so much for being with me this evening, giving up some time. I know that this issue matters to just statewide. And so I appreciate you coming to talk to folks in Northeast Tennessee.
Well, thank you, Kate, for having me. You know, it's so important that we have more candidates like you that care about the issues of working people and are not carrying the water of corporations. So thank you. I encourage everyone that is hearing this to support the Kate Craig campaign. She's one of the best.
Well, it takes one to know one. So you're one of the best too. And I appreciate all that you're doing. So thank you everybody for tuning in this evening. Next Sunday, we'll be talking with Jay Emberton. It's the anniversary of 9/11. So we'll be talking about, kind of what that means, and as well as, why it's so important that we support our veterans and what's going on. As somebody who worked for the Navy, family of people that served in the Navy, this is imperative that we invest in those communities, because there's so much that's at stake for them this election cycle. And I also remind everybody, on the 10th, we'll be out at the Emoja Festival. That's going to be in King Commons. The parade kicks off at 11, and we'll be from Carver towards King Commons, and then we'll be there from noon until 10 tabling. So come by and see us in Joss City at King Commons Park. So thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful evening.